Ghostbusters does a great job of being like this super comedy, and then also like a great job of kind of being like scary.
It
Like they
is
actually do a good
legit.
job
Those
of being
ghost dogs
scary.
are legit scary as shit. Like,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
So
It's the perfect blend of humor and horror. It really is. I mean, and it's not an outright horror movie. Obviously, it's safe. You know, it's not. Nobody's really. There's not a lot of people dying. You know, it's more family friendly, but still for older people. You can tell. I mean, the humor definitely is directed towards adults in the original. Yeah, it's great, man. I think it's a classic. It's got some of the best lines in movie history. Welcome back to the Movie Dads podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Howie.
I'm Kyle.
That is Kyle. Kyle, we're back for episode number 41 of the Movie Dads podcast.
Crazy.
The supernatural comedy classic Ghostbusters and its sequel, Ghostbusters 2. We're doing Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2, so you get a bonus episode, 2 movies, just like when we did Batman and Batman Returns. We're doing both movies. We also did, I think we did Turtles and Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze, didn't we, before Mutant Mayhem? We did a 2-parter there, too.
Yeah, that's right.
I think we did. That's right. So another 2-parter as we get ready for the premiere next week of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. But like always, we're movie dads. We've got movie kids. Let's see. What did we have going on this weekend? St. Patrick's Day was this weekend. We kind of do a family get together with my side of the family every year on St. Patrick's Day, or like the Saturday immediately preceding it.
Nice.
So we had a big family get together. Kids ate grilled cheese sandwiches. The rest of us ate Reubens or corned beef and whatnot. Kids they ain't touching that salty corned meat. They wanted to know where the corn was, but there was no corn. But we had a good time. We had a party. Kids hung out. We did normal family stuff, and then all the kids got together and we watched the Taylor Swift Eras tour.
Oh, lovely.
At the end of the night, yes, dance party ensued. I'd had about 8 Guinnesses and 6 Irish car bombs at that point, so I was fully invested in the Eras tour and falling asleep. So it was.
Oh my God.
It was pretty good. It was entertaining though. But we did that this weekend, so it was pretty fun. Kind of a little story. So my wife had a get together on Friday, so it was me and the kids, and I have several arcade 1-up arcade cabinets. And so we have the Simpsons one, which has the old Simpsons arcade game on it, and has Simpsons bowling. It's like the only arcade 1-up that you can't buy the matching stool for individually. Like every other cabinet you can buy a stool for separately. Like you can just buy the stool on its own. That one you can't. The only way you could get the stool for the cabinet is if you bought the bundle where you got the cabinet with the stool, which I didn't have.
Stool is like rare.
It is rare. So for like 2 years, I've been like scouring Facebook Marketplace. I even have like a saved search on there for Simpsons arcade stool.
Right.
Lo and behold, last Thursday while I'm out of town for work, a guy in Lincoln is selling the Simpsons stool.
Oh, nice.
So I messaged him immediately.
Nice.
Yeah, close by. So I messaged, and I have like 250-mile radius. I'm not driving any further than that for a stool. But he was in Lincoln. So Friday night, kids got in the car, and I'm like, we're going to go get a stool. And there, of course, my kids are like, did you pay a reasonable amount for this stool? And I'm like, no, but it's going to match.
You guys know what a reasonable amount is.
Right.
God.
So, yeah, road trip to Lincoln on Friday night to buy a overpriced Simpsons stool. It probably isn't overpriced because I could probably turn around and sell in Omaha for like way more than I actually paid for it because it is like hard to find. So yeah. Anyway, that was it. That's all I had.
Love that. Love that for you. That's because you'll have a complete set for everyone then.
Now everyone's got now it's got a matching stool.
Your man cave is great. So Speaking of man caves, I finally got my NECA turtles up and my new poster. Check that little nerd setup out.
That's nice.
I don't know why, but like I'm obsessed with it. Um, so for us, dad stuff, St. Patty's Day 1 used to be like my second favorite holiday next to Christmas. And I don't really drink anymore. So it like that holiday has lost the whole entire purpose that it had once.
I drank
for me.
enough for both of us.
I do love an Irish car bomb here and there, but for the most part, I don't really drink anymore. So, but holidays, we are in like that fun zone for holidays with like our kids' ages, because like every holiday is something and like we do something. And so like this holiday, it's like there's going to be a leprechaun that comes. He's going to try to take our coins. We got to set a trap, put some coins down, and like Parker thought like it was the coolest thing that we were going to trap the leprechauns. So he and I and Grayson put together like a little box with like a stick that was holding the box up, but it had like a shoestring that was tied to the stick, and that was draped from the table across the floor in the kitchen. So if they walked in, they'd walk through the shoestring, it would pull that, and it would drop the box. We put a little thing of Lucky Charms cereal in a bowl inside, because obviously leprechauns love Lucky Charms cereal.
Is that cultural appropriation?
I don't know. Is it? I mean, it's leprechaun is literally the mascot of that cereal. So, and then Parker didn't feel like one box trap was enough, so he talked us into tying a like circle laundry basket above the box.
Oh, of course.
Hanging above the box, and he was
like
very worried. Yeah, exactly. It literally looked exactly like the mousetrap, but obviously bigger. And he was very concerned on like the size of the laundry basket not being bigger than the box. So what happens if the second trap falls and it doesn't fall on top of the box, and we're screwed? So he balanced a ninja sword next to it. So we had a ninja sword,
nice.
a mousetrap, and this box. And so obviously they don't listen to this podcast, so they don't know that I am the leprechaun. So took the Lucky Charms, took the coins, left them chocolate coins, and then basically set the trap off. So like this morning, they were at grandma's for Saturday night, so we had to do it this morning. So they come on St. Patty's Day Eve or the night of. So anyways, so this morning they woke up early as fuck, kind of like Christmas morning, to be like, Dad, we gotta go see if we caught the leprechaun. And they like lost their mind when we walked downstairs and the trap was like set. And they were shocked when they opened it up and saw there was gold coins and that they missed them.
Then there were gold coins, but no Peter Dinklage.
Yes, no Peter Dinklage.
I'm the leprechaun.
Yeah. No terrifying horror movie leprechaun under the box. But yeah, that's what kid dad stuff. That's our world. I guess that would lead us into, we got kind of a lot to talk about, I'd say. In my most excited segment, our 6 to midnight. This is our segment where we talk about things that are new news, trailers, things we're nerding out about for the week, things that get us up in the morning this week. And there's a lot that came out this week and new news. I'm going to let you jump in first. Tell us your 6 to midnight, and then I'll go.
Sounds good. So a couple news stories that came out this past week, especially since you've had so much to say over the last few episodes about DC Studios. DC Studios did announce this week they are making a live-action Teen Titans movie, which I found very interesting because Teen Titans did just come off of a live-action series on Max that was pretty successful, if I remember right. And I enjoyed it. So I think it's kind of interesting to see Being live action, obviously Teen Titans also was a pretty popular animated series recently too, with an animated movie and everything. It kind of went with that. Yeah, not a lot of details yet because it just got announced. But yeah, interesting to see where they go with that, because it makes you wonder, are they going to do a more serious tone like they did with the Max series, kind of led by Nightwing, or are they going to go to a more, I don't know, goofy kind of cartoon vibe like they did with the animated series, or maybe they'll meet somewhere in the middle? It's kind of interesting to see. Also, kind of, you figure, the Teen Titans also always kind of popular in pop culture, have had a similar lineup. The animated series and the live action both kind of did. So kind of makes you wonder where they'll go with it. So what are your thoughts? Any on that?
Yeah, I saw that they announced that, and I like that. I'm okay with Teen Titans. It's a good group, depending on if you got the right characters in it. When they announced it, like the news or the like nerdy YouTube channels I watched that were talking about it, it's like I had mentioned that with the new Batman coming out with the Brave and the Bold, that it's set in the time frame of Damian Wayne Robin is there, which I think when we talked about originally, I had said, like, what does that mean for the other Robins? Like, does that mean like Damien's the first Robin, or are the other Robins already here? And just listening to these kind of nerd channels while this news dropped, it was it was almost like they were like, oh, it's confirmed since Damian Wayne Robin is here, that like we're getting like Nightwing, we're getting potentially Tim Drake Robin. So folks are like excited for the Teen Titans because it means like we're gonna get either super badass like Dick Grayson Nightwing, or we're gonna get Tim Drake Robin potentially in the Teen Titans. So for me, you got to have either Robin or Nightwing. Preferably, I actually like Robin. I like younger Robin, and Cyborg's got to be in it. I'm not. I know like the new hotness is Cyborg being in like the Justice League, but I'm an old school guy. He's a Teen Titan to me. So I'm hoping they do that and keep it a little bit classic. Beast Boy Robin, Cyborg, Star Girl, right? No, not Star Girl, Starfire. Jesus,
Starfire.
Kyle. Jesus. And then Raven, right?
Raven, right. Yeah.
So I mean, cool. Like, I would much rather that than like Booster Gold, because like I'm getting a Batman character with Robin or Nightwing. So
well, Booster Gold's getting his own show, so
yeah, fucking Jesus Christ. What? Yeah, Booster Gold, freaking Waller. Like, no one gives a fuck about those shows.
Here he goes again. Here we go.
Don't get me on it. I'm back and forth every single week. They delayed the Batman 2, which I can't remember if we talked about that or not on the last episode.
No, we did. We talked about how it was gonna happen, and then it did.
God, what an atrocity. Like, I keep going like, all right, James Gunn, I like you, I'm happy, and then I'm like not happy, and then I'm happy where Superman is filming. I am not happy that it's delayed, even though we had said on a couple episodes ago, like it was pretty, like all signs pointed to being delayed, but they delayed it a whole year.
Yeah, that was the first thing I said to you when it was announced. I was like, okay, so you just got an October release, got delayed. Why wouldn't you just move it to March, April, May, June? And now you've got a summer movie.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
You're gonna go to October. You're gonna go a whole year. Okay,
dude, so much time between the first movie and the next.
Like, I hate that. I don't like it.
God, yeah, like I guess 5 years as opposed to 2.5 years is not that big of a difference, but. Well,
okay,
these are supposed to be like the new young actors doing this franchise, and now by the time they get the second one out, everyone's going to be old as shit.
Well, that's the problem, right? Like, so you cast Robert Pattinson, right? He's still fairly young, and it's Batman year 2, essentially, is what the Batman is, right? It's essentially Batman year 1, year 2. Well, now, are you going to make him Like, is it going to be right after? Or is this going to be 5 years later?
Yeah.
Is this totally different? Like, if you're delaying it by 5 years, I mean, you're just going to make it where it happens right afterwards. It just seems harder to do. I don't know.
Yeah. Like the other thing is it's not a part of like this new DCU. So there's a lot of questions of like, was this not a priority? And that's why you just didn't care enough to like push people to get it done in time. Did the strike really like take us that far out of the Batman being done? Like, I don't know. I know Matt Reeves had like a long-term plan of what he wanted to do.
Right.
But really like his main focus was just doing a cool Batman like detective noir movie, and he got to make it. And so I think the second one, there's not as much like, this is a huge thing that like I got to make sure we have done. It's like, all right, we'll do Batman when we can. And it's just, everyone just doesn't, there's no urgency. And maybe James Gunn was like, yeah, let's just delay it a year, give you guys the time you need, because then we can do our own Batman. And
well, I mean, that's the thing though, is so we're getting Superman in 2025. Like, are we gonna get Brave and the Bold Batman? Well, now we're getting the Batman 2 in 2026. So Brave and the Bold would have to be at least 2027. Like that's 3 years from now. Is that what we're looking at?
It's fine because we will have the Waller show, Booster Gold show.
Here we go.
To
Creature
get
Commandos.
us by Creature Commandos. There's a Penguin show that has Colin Farrell's.
Did you hear the thing about Peacemaker? They're making a sequel series, like a season 2 to Peacemaker. And season 2 will be canon to the new DC universe, but season 1 is not a thing.
Oh my god!
Did you hear like that? They literally came out and said that. Like season 1 won't be a real thing.
Why is there such a cluster?
I don't know, man.
It's
like
so
just
difficult.
get all new people. Just scrap it.
Yeah.
Either you can't keep some stuff and get rid of the rest. That seems so dumb.
Yeah, that's just like rip the Band-Aid or don't rip the Band-Aid. Like, if you're gonna keep something canon, keep Man of Steel canon and keep fucking Henry Cavill as Superman. Anyways, we'll talk all day about that stuff. Yep. But okay, Teen Titans, great, love that.
Yeah, and then I was gonna talk about there's a new movie coming out next week, and then I know you've seen the trailer for it, and I've seen the trailer for it, but it's called Late Night with the Devil, and it premiered last year at South by Southwest, and then it did some film festivals, and kind of flew under the radar all year, and then it I think it was at Fantastic Fest, and then Stephen King got a pre-release screening. And he came out and said, like, this is one of the best horror movies I've seen in years. It's you can't take your eyes off it, blah, blah, blah. So now it's getting all this buzz on social media. And it's 53 reviews currently on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's 100%. And it comes out on the 22nd. But it's called Late Night with the Devil. It stars David Dalsmakian as like a 1977 talk show host, and it's filmed as like found footage. And it's like the last episode of this talk show because he brings on like an author who wrote this book about, she was like a doctor with a psychology patient that is apparently possessed by the devil. So then she brings the girl on the show, and I guess literally all hell breaks loose. But it's like a found footage kind of movie. It looks awesome, but it comes out next weekend. The trailer
looks so cool.
It looks so good. But yeah, I'm pretty excited to go see that next weekend. So I think after Ghostbusters, I'm gonna palate cleanse with Late Night with the Devil.
Nice. What I like, it looks very original. Like, looks very much like nothing we've seen before.
Totally. And I like found footage, and I know you like some found footage movies. I think they're,
love them.
Yeah, I think they're. You're gonna talk. I know you're gonna talk about one, but they're super interesting if they're done right. There are some crappy found footage movies out there, but like there are some really cool ones. And marketing is a big deal with found footage too. Yeah. Obviously, Blair Witch even the first Paranormal Activity, like these are movies that like nobody had ever heard of, and then
Yeah.
marketing really pushed them, and they became these huge, massive viral hits, and then they were
Yeah.
massive box office hits. And I feel like this has that vibe too. Like this is like gonna do some big money because I think it's getting a lot of marketing right now. And so anyway, I'm
Yeah.
super excited to see that. But anyway, that's what I had
Found
this week.
footage. We should totally talk about. Maybe we should do that as a list one of these episodes, because as you said that, I immediately thought of like two movies that are not really very well known or common, like a big. They're not like a big franchise, but for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason, I've stumbled upon them and fucking love them. So I
Mm-hmm.
love to talk about. Speaking of, one of the things I want to talk about for 6 to Midnight was Ed, like one of the best horror franchises that nobody knows about is the Blackwell Ghost. I don't know if you've, yeah. So when I originally had kind of talked with you about
Mm-hmm.
these movies, I don't think you had seen them, but
No, you recommended it, and I think at the time there were 4 out or 5 out.
yes, there's 8 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Which, when you say that, it sounds very like Friday the 13th. That's not the case. Like, they're short. They're like an hour and 10-minute long
Yep.
movies. So they're really short. And it originally, the first one, it was like an Amazon Prime, like available straight to streaming. But the clip that they use, like the cover for it, is this like scary ass old lady dressed in like a Victorian clothes. And I don't know how or why, but at one point my wife and I were like, we're gonna watch this scary movie. And so we put it on, and it's this guy who, it's found footage. He is a filmmaker that goes and stays in this house, the Blackwell house. And like he sets up cameras because this guy tells him that it's haunted. So he sets up cameras, and like haunted, like paranormal activity ensues. I don't know. Like, I've talked about this, I think, in the past when we've talked about paranormal activity. I think there's something to, like, you could do a whole movie of just like a haunted house, like banging on the wall, banging on the windows, things closing. You could do a whole movie, and I would be like scared and terrified and interested. And that's essentially what this guy did.
Yep.
To start. And like it's so good to where he has continued to make them, and the story gets like more elaborate, more like spooky, gets a little bit more like there's some twists and some revelations and some like, I would say kind of like not CSI, but like murder mystery stuff that he stumbles upon with these ghosts and things. But there's been 8 freaking movies. They just came out with a new one. Previous to that, the newest one was in 2022. But it's a franchise that every single movie is good, all of them. And when you tell people about it, every friend that I've told about, they have not seen it. And then by the time I've told them about it and they started watching it, they have binged through the whole thing because it's like so bingeable. But anyways, the new movie just dropped for it. And of course, when I think, had pointed out, like, oh my God, there's a new Blackwell Ghost. And my wife and I were like, we have to stop everything we're watching right now because we need to watch this movie. So, and it was great. It's a little bit different than the more recent ones, but like the last one set up where this was going, if that makes any sense. But it's so good, and I don't want to give any spoilers away, but you guys got to check it out. The Blackwell Ghost. Watch it.
I will say they are
1 through 8.
really entertaining. And they're not all, I mean, they're all kind of connected, but at the same time, it's like 1 and 2 tell one long story.
Yeah.
And then like 3, 4, 5 tell one long story. And then a new story starts. And then the new ones kind of go back to talk about something that happened in the past. But this was the first one that I saw, obviously, right when it came out, because I binged all the others. So then this one got over, and I'm like, well, shit, now I can't go watch the next
Yeah.
one. Now I was like,
Yeah.
I did that with all the others. I just watched them all. And now it's like,
Yes.
crap. I have to wait.
That's what my wife and we were literally like, you could, like, the story was getting good and was like drawing us in. And then I
Yeah.
could very much tell, like, wait a minute, there's been too much time.
Yep.
This is going to end soon. It's going to end and we're not going to have the next one ready to watch. And of course
Right.
it ended. I'm like, God damn.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah. And the actor in that, it's just one guy who, like, he has all his own cameras. He's so
and he's
likable.
a real person.
Yeah.
He plays himself.
Yes.
He's like a not even B movie director. He's like a C movie director.
Yes.
He made some like really low budget horror movies nobody's ever heard of.
Yes. He's like the perfect lovable oaf. And so I think, like, he's just so likable that he makes the movie so great. So if you haven't watched him, you guys got to go watch him. So
yeah.
And then one last thing, I know we've talked a ton in the 6 to Midnight about stuff. The new Crow trailer dropped. The Crow,
the reboot remake.
Yeah, that I don't have like an internal like passionful like love for The Crow or the original movie or comic books. I've obviously seen the original Crow. I have read some of the comic books, but I'm not privy enough to the information in that franchise to be like upset with it. But I get the vibe that there are a lot of Crow fans who are not happy with Skarsgård.
There are a lot of people that are not happy, including the original film's director, who is like up in arms that they remade it and he hates the way it looks and fans are with him. And why would you remake this? Well, they remake everything, in case you didn't realize it at this point. Anything that can be remade, they're going to remake it.
Yes.
And make some money off of it. And I'll be honest with you, I thought the trailer looked cool. It looked super violent, which,
dude,
sign me up.
Yes, it looks like, I thought the same thing. Trailer came out, I was like, oh, cool, The Crow and it's Skarsgård. Like, hell yeah.
I'll watch anything old Bill's in. I like him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me Pennywise the Crow.
I'm all for it, man. I mean, I've heard some people say that he looks like a goth version of Jared Leto's Joker, which does. Yeah, I kind of get that vibe when you look at him with the face tattoos and stuff. I get it. Listen, I don't think the original Crow is the. Yeah, I know it's a cult classic, and I know some people really like that movie. I don't think it's that great. I think it's more known for the movie that Brandon Lee died making. I mean, I've watched it once, and it was like,
I think I've seen it one time.
I'm like, I'm good. I'll never need to watch that again.
Yeah,
I'm fine with them remaking it. It's not like they're, I don't know. I mean, they're remaking Superman. Is anybody pissed about that for the 18th time other than Kyle?
I'm not pissed because they're making a Superman movie.
I know.
Because I guess it's probably the same reason why the Crow people, like, I'm pissed because I want it to be perfect.
I want it to be somebody else. Anyway, it is what it is. I don't think the Crow should be this like protected property. It's fine. I'm good with it.
Yeah.
And it looks interesting.
Watch it. I think it looks cool. It looks super gory, which is
super.
Which I think is what those movies are supposed to be. So
yeah, blood guts. Let's go. Anyway, before we get to our Nerdstalgia movie of the week, I do need to say, if you're watching us on YouTube, please click the like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment. Click the bell. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. If you're not watching us on YouTube, hopefully you're listening to us on one of many podcast networks such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Index. You can also see some of our short clips and videos on social media at MovieDadsPod on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. I forgot that earlier. What? Whoop, whoop.
I was thinking, like, I jumped the gun on the 6 minute?
No, it was before that. Totally my miss. Anyway, that takes us into our Nerdstalgia. You need to see these movies, starting with the 1984 supernatural comedy classic, Ghostbusters, and its 1989 sequel, Ghostbusters 2. Ghostbusters was produced and distributed by Columbia Pictures, as was the sequel. Both movies are directed by Ivan Reitman. Both movies are written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. And both movies star Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis, Rick Moranis, Ernie Hudson, and Annie Potts. The first movie was made with a budget of $25 to $30 million and made $295 million at the box office. Second movie with a little bit higher budget from 30 to 40 million, but didn't quite make the same money that the first one did at $215.4 million, facing some stiffer competition and negative reviews, which we'll talk about.
Wait, say one more time the budgets for both. What was what? And what
First one was somewhere between 25 and 30 million.
Mm-hmm.
No exact number. It made 295. The second one was between 30 and 40.
Box office.
And made 215.
Fascinating. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but that's interesting to me. If you're watching the video, you saw me yelling at someone over there. I was trying to tell my wife to turn the TV off because it's making my thing lag here. So, yeah, going back to these movies, Ghostbusters is just such a great franchise.
Mm-hmm.
It's so just it's so fucking perfect. So I enjoyed getting to jump back into them. Perfect in ways of like the concept itself is so cool. It's like the Ninja Turtles. Like you could do it 100 different versions, and people are going to be interested because it's just a cool concept. Does that make sense?
Well, there was one version that people weren't super interested in.
Yeah. Well, I think people still went and saw it, and I think it made money.
At least a little bit.
But yeah, well, that's what happens when you take a beloved franchise and you try to like make it a completely new thing just to make it a new thing. Like, anyways, sorry, we're getting off track. Let's jump into the movie. I did recently also watch the Afterlife as well, just like prep for this week. So
sure,
I did all
absolutely. So the original 1984 Ghostbusters was a concept actually originally conceived by Dan Aykroyd to be a starring vehicle for him and John Belushi before John Belushi passed away in 1982. The original idea was that they would be like time and space travelers that would hunt ghosts in different places. Yep. And when it was pitched to the studio, they're like, let's make it tone it down a little bit. Let's make it a little bit more. Let's make it a little bit more grounded. Yeah. Let's set it maybe modern day in a city. It'll cost a little bit cheaper. Let's do that. Funny, when this movie originally came out, it was the highest budgeted comedy, and it had like the first comedy with like visual effects in it. And the studio had zero expectations that this movie would make money whatsoever. Yeah.
There's a great, obviously the movies that made us as a show on Netflix, they have an amazing episode about this franchise and the original movie that gives us like all these great nuggets behind the scenes, like that they didn't have the name like Ghostbusters. They didn't have that like in like they were shooting the movie and had not confirmed that they were going to be Ghostbusters, or like they were filming some scenes twice with the Ghostbusters like sign, I think, on their at the Ghostbusters house, and then we're like switching out. I can't remember what the other name of it was. Do you know what the one that wasn't you?
I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember because there was like a TV show, and I don't remember if it was Australian or what, but it was called Ghostbusters, and it was like these people that chase ghosts, and they had like a freaking gorilla. They really did. It was a TV show. I can't remember what it was originally called. Carry on. I'll find it.
This movie has, it's like, it is like uber famous for like the production and behind the scenes of how it came to be, and like just turned into this like darling for nerds everywhere for the rest of their life. There's some nerds out there that are there's like Ghostbusters is life, just like Star Wars, just like Star Trek. So like another like really cool, I think it
Ghost
interesting
Breakers.
Ghost Breakers. Could you
Yeah,
imagine? Who are you
they
gonna
even
call?
considered they even
Ghost
considered
Breakers.
the names Ghost Smashers and Ghost Stoppers.
Ghost Stoppers.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean the song. I
terrible.
was just singing like how iconic is that song? It's insane to me that Bill Murray was like signed on to do the movie, but nobody knew if he was actually going to do it or show up.
Yep.
And then like he shows up on day one, and they're like, "Oh shit, okay." We were nervous, like our main star, or one of the main characters, wasn't actually going to be in the movie. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of
anyways,
interesting things about the whole filming and everything. Plus, so Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis wrote this movie, but they essentially wrote this movie for them to be main characters, but not the lead, which I
yeah,
found was fast. Like they knew we needed to bring in Bill Murray to be the lead in this, you
yeah,
know. And Bill Murray had worked with Harold Ramis a ton previously.
mm-hmm.
Caddyshack, which Harold Ramis wrote,
Yep,
and I think he directed it too. And then obviously Stripes, what I think was like 1982 or 83. So they'd already worked together several times. And then obviously Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd were on Saturday Night Live together.
yeah,
So that's kind of how they all just kind of meshed and got together. But yeah, no, I mean it's obviously everybody knows the basic plot of Ghostbusters. We don't need to tell you really the details, but it's these guys they work for like it's like they are New York University. They're like work for the college. They do paranormal research. It's all funded by the university, right? They get shut down, so they decide to go into business for themselves, right? Because that's after the library ghost incident, which is one of the most terrifying scenes in a
scary.
comedy when you're a child
Yeah,
ever, is when Gitter and
yeah. This
terrifying.
quiet little librarian ghost turns into this horrifying monster.
Yeah.
Like, scares my kids. The first time they watched this movie, that ghost scared the shit out of them.
Yeah.
So,
and I saw in the Frozen Empire trailer, like a ghost is back, and I'm like,
yes,
no thanks.
love the little nostalgia nuggets.
Yeah. Yeah, but at the after that, basically going to business for themselves. They get a client who's played by Sigourney Weaver. She's seeing things in her refrigerator. She's got eggs cooking on the countertop on her own. So they go to investigate, and then that's when like all these ghost things start happening. They find out these things about her building and the architect, and then that's when they realize this like demigod's gonna come back, and that's basically the plot of the movie. A whole bunch of hijinks ensue with ghost busting and stuff. We'll get to that, but yeah, it's a classic, man. Like you watch this thing, it seems like every time I watch this movie, and couldn't tell you how many times I've seen the original Ghostbusters, like a million, but it seems like every time I watch it, a scene will come on, and I already know like all the dialogue, but it's like oh shit, I forgot. That's hilarious. Just some of the lines, some of the delivery, like even the way all these Harold Ramis playing the like straight nerdy dry is perfect.
Yes.
Dan Aykroyd is the smart scientist, but also witty and kind of goofy is perfect. And Bill Murray is awesome in this movie. His dryness, obviously he like ad-libbed a ton of stuff. You can tell just watching the movie he did, but
Yeah. The ad-libbing, I think, is like just, God, they crushed it. Bill
yeah,
Murray is freaking hilarious. Let
they
him
all are.
cook.
Yeah,
Yes.
they all are. Some of the lines, like even at the beginning of when they walk into the library the first time, and Ray's like, "Listen, you smell something?" Just shit like that. It's the dumbest thing in the world, but it cracks me up every time I hear it. I don't know
Yes.
why. I just think it's hilarious.
I think I mentioned this on an episode when we were talking about the trailer for the new one that's coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Like my favorite Ghostbuster scenes, or like where I like to watch the Ghostbusters, is when they're doing like when they're just like an exterminator crew. Like it's called in, there's a ghost, we're calling the Ghostbusters. They come in and they like when they get called to the hotel to catch Slimer. That is like, that's just, I could watch 100 movies of that same thing, of them just going, catching a small ghost, trying to track it down. I think for me, I feel like, just like Batman has Gotham and the Ninja Turtles have New York City, I think the city of New York is a like a staple for the Ghostbusters.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I feel like that was what was missing in Afterlife. I really liked Afterlife, but and I know what they were doing was very original, and it was a cool way to loop in the old movie and connect it to new characters while also bringing some old characters back. It's great. But I think not having New York City for the Ghostbusters was like a little like it was lacking. So I'm excited for the new one because we're getting New York back.
Exactly. And I think you and I talked about that before. I felt like the Afterlife was to set up, like it was almost like a test the waters kind of thing. Like, do audiences really want a new Ghostbusters? Like, and obviously it was very much a story about Egon, right? Afterlife was, and I know that's not the movie we're talking about this week, but it was like, it kind of then brought the old guys in at the end. And it was like, so you set up this whole new different group of people, like learning about Ghostbusters, but they're Spanglers, so it ties in together. And then you bring all the old guys in at the end, right? And you basically have now tested whether people are interested in Ghostbusters again, which they were. And then that's why we're getting Frozen Empire, because now we're back in New York. We've got everybody back. Old guys are back, you know. And Bill Murray said he was never going to do it. He said, I'll never do it. I won't do it. And then Ivan Reitman's son comes in and says, I'm going to write and direct the Afterlife. And Bill Murray's like, okay, I like it. Let's go.
That also, there's a huge part with the director and with the original, and then his son doing Afterlife that was like really cool. So anyways, so movie one, Sigourney Weaver's character is like, she did a great job. Super, like, she ends up being really creepy. Like the keymaster, like the ghost dogs running around.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters does a great job of being like this super comedy, and then also like a great job of kind of being like scary. Like
it is
actually do a good
legit.
job.
Those ghost dogs are legit scary as shit. Like, it is what it is. So, it's the perfect blend of humor and horror. It really is. I mean, and it's not an outright horror movie. Obviously, it's safe. You know, it's not. Nobody's really. There's not a lot of people dying. You know, it's more family friendly, but still for, you know, older people. You can tell. I mean, the humor definitely is directed towards adults in the original. Yeah, it's great, man. I think it's a classic. It's got some of the best lines in movie history. Like, I've seen shit that'll turn you white. When Winston says that to the mayor, it cracks me up every damn time. Hilarious.
Yes.
I love that movie. It's great.
So the second one, not to just jump into that, but just
go into it.
At the same time, the second one, I think, like, did a lot of things great, but for whatever reason, I don't feel like it captured the same magic as the first one, but still was a good movie in its own right.
Yeah. So when the second one had test screenings that were panned heavily by test audiences, and they cut out a ton and reshot whole new scenes that they had put 2 months before the movie came out. They reshot whole new scenes and put them into the movie, and basically with the final product we got. When the movie came out, it was mostly panned by critics. Audiences liked it, but panned by critics, who said, among different things, that they didn't like that the Ghostbusters were older and were acting more subdued or mature or whatever. They didn't like that it felt like a copy of the first movie, like the same storyline.
Yeah.
And then the biggest beef that seemed to people have with it, with that, they were catering it more towards kids. I think I get all those complaints. I understand everything they're saying, but these are obviously Ghostbusters that they have not Ghostbusters anymore. They've moved on because there are no more ghosts. They're doing other jobs. They're real adults. These are doctors that are now having to work and do other jobs. Like in the first movie, they literally have conversations about, they came out of college, they did this like funded thing by the university, and this is the first time they've had their real job, and they start a ghost busting business,
Yeah.
And so the second one does kind of show them more mature and adults. It is 5 years later. Like that's what it is. And yes, they catered that movie. It's a little bit softer toned. Yes, it's not as scary as the first one. You can tell it's more designed for families and for kids. But what movie franchise really didn't do that for marketing purposes? Because that's how people made money. We saw that with a ton of franchises. So I think history has been kinder to Ghostbusters 2 than the release was. Because I don't see it as a bad sequel at all. And a lot of people, I read some stuff that said like Ghostbusters 2 isn't as good when you compare it to Ghostbusters 1, and that's why people say it's a bad sequel. But if Ghostbusters 2 was its own movie, it would be fine. Yeah, and they listed other examples too. They listed like, listen, here were some other sequels in the 80s that had the exact same thing. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom wasn't as good as Raiders of the Lost Ark, but on its own, it's a great movie.
Yeah.
Back to the Future 2 was viewed as a not as good sequel as the first one, but Back to the Future 2 is a good movie on its own. But too many people are comparing these as sequels that aren't as good, when in all actuality, these are actually really good movies. You're just looking at them as like, oh, it's a letdown because it's the sequel to this all-time great movie. And it's hard for lightning to strike again, right?
That's such such an astute observation. Like, because we do that all the time now with
all
movies
the time
that are coming out in sequels, and I'm like, it wasn't as good as this. I wanted it to be that. But like when I think of Indiana Jones, I don't think of them in like which order they came out and which one was better. Like to me, like the original 3 are like all great movies.
But if you had to say of those 3, what's the worst one? I would think the majority of people would say Temple of Doom.
I agree with that.
And I think that's why. And
it's the way you say that, though, is, and you had touched on this a few minutes ago, like when we're talking about, when we say which one's better from these 2, because we're picking this one over this one, you think that makes it sound like this is like, oh, then everyone's comment on it's not good. It is good, just in comparison to that. So that's this second Ghostbusters, like, I know it's supposed to be less scary and more kid friendly, but this has like one of the scariest freaking movie scenes of my entire childhood in it, when that creepy ghost on the flying bike flies up to the window and steals the baby
with the super long.
That just like that thing slowly flying from the distance up to the window is like one of the scariest movie scenes of my life. Like I sometimes would not want to watch the movie itself because of that one scene where I would be like,
funny to me because it's the goofy ass museum guy dressed as a woman on a bicycle stealing the baby. That's why that's funny to me. But I understand what you're saying because it is creepy as hell.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I didn't like none of that process. It was just this creepy ass thing flying and stealing a kid. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want that to happen to me. Fucking terrifying. So Anyways, yeah, I like the first one a lot better than the second one, but I still enjoy the second one. Like,
I do too, and I don't even know if I'd say a lot better. I mean, I'd say marginally better because I feel like they're both really good movies. Um, Watching the second one again this time, I think I appreciated it more than I ever have. And like, I think I like Winston better in the second one. He obviously gets more screen time. He feels like an
way
afterthought in the
more
first
screen
one,
time. Yeah,
you know?
he shows up like the very end and then is like one of the Ghostbusters.
Yeah, and it wasn't originally written that way. They, I guess, changed the script, and I think it had to do with, I think it was originally supposed to be Eddie Murphy, and they changed it. And I love Ernie Hudson. I think he's great as Winston. So that's, but he obviously is kind of an afterthought in the first one. I mean, all the marketing is three Ghostbusters, like even the posters, the three Ghostbusters, and
Yeah.
even the billing. It was Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis, Rick Moranis,
God.
and then like Ernie Hudson's like down here at the bottom. I mean, I get it, but
Racist. That's what it is.
like the scene where they're in the tunnel and they're looking for the river of slime, and the train comes and they're doing the echo and like, hey, hello, Winston. And then he gets the train. I mean, yeah, I love it. That's great. There's so many good scenes in that. And you were talking about like the hotel scene with Slimer in the first one, right? And how you could watch that over and over again. The trial scene where they're in the courtroom, and the second one where they where the slime bubbles over and the two guys in the electric chair ghosts show up. That scene's awesome too. I think it's great.
Yeah, it was such a different movie. The second one was so different than the first, but like I agree. Like having Winston be a little bit more of like an actual character in the movie was we needed that. That makes sense.
I agree. And yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and also like I forgive me for not knowing her name, but the receptionist.
Annie Potts.
She is
Janine.
She's iconic. Like she is like you can't have the Ghostbusters without having her Ghostbusters. Like like she's so great. So seeing her in the trailer for the new one that's coming out makes my heart happy. So.
And Rick Moranis is obviously hilarious in the first one as like Sigourney Weaver's neighbor. And then in the second one, he's their attorney who is terrible. He's like a tax lawyer. Like, I think you guys are making a big mistake, like I got my law degree at night, and Dan Aykroyd's like, well, we got arrested at night.
Dude, God.
Hilarious. Yeah, I like that. I like all the characters. I like both movies. Like I could watch them. I don't know. I don't get tired of watching them. I think they're great movies.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many like you mentioned, iconic one-liners, iconic scenes, like the Stay Puft Marshmallow giant at the end of the first one, like just like these characters or pictures or images that like when you see it, you immediately think Ghostbusters, and like Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is like
or Slimer,
or Slimer
right away. I mean, he got his own high C drink,
Ecto
Cooler for years. They there was, after the second one came out and it was not well regarded, that was when Bill Murray said, I'm not making a third one. He just said, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to. I don't want to do it again, all the issues and everything. And, part of me is sad we didn't get like a Ghostbusters 3 with them in their prime. I mean, it sucks, but at the same time, we got to grow up with these two movies that are both so good. And they didn't make a third one until, whatever it was, whatever they could make it work, And I'll be, we briefly mentioned the 2016 reboot that was not well regarded. And again, I'm going to say the exact same thing. The reboot is automatically going to be compared to the first two, right? And it doesn't work. The reboot on its own, as its own thing, if the other movies didn't exist, would probably be reviewed a lot better. in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, I think
Yeah.
its own thing, it's fine. But you're remaking a classic, an absolute 80s classic movie, and it's not going to end well, especially
Yeah.
when you know, with what you've changed and how different the tone is and everything. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I get that, but at the same time, that's why I think the whole afterlife thing, I think that worked really well, even though it wasn't in New York, like you said, even though it didn't feature the old guys a lot. It was this gateway to kind of show like people are still interested. People want to see it. It was well received. And now I'm almost terrified that this movie's not going to be good. You know,
Mm,
like I want it to be good so bad because I
yeah.
want this to keep happening. And my one of my biggest fears going into next week is that this movie's gonna suck.
See, this is not like the Flash or the Creator where I have like huge expectations that it's going
Mm-hmm.
to be a really good movie.
All right.
But like maybe that allows me to be more like open to like where this is going. I think what you had mentioned when they did the reboot, or not, I guess not reboot, but this sequel Afterlife that came out.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I enjoyed it because it's like we're seeing even though the main actors aren't really in it, at least for
Yeah.
most of it,
Right.
like it's still continuing that story. It's paying homage to the actual originals. Like they talk about it whenever they bring up like, oh, you don't
Mm-hmm.
know who the Ghostbusters are? Like there's
Yep.
these really cool things in the 80s. It's almost like they're just talking about the Ghostbuster movies, but they're talking about
Yep.
the actual Ghostbusters. Like it was a cool way to introduce new audiences
Yep.
to the Ghostbusters while also like bringing us nerdy like old schoolers in.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of did, I would say, it did like the Stranger Things thing. It felt kind of like
Mm-hmm.
Stranger Things. Obviously, there's an actor from Stranger Things that is in
Mm-hmm.
there. Kind of like the new It Chapter One. Like it felt like they were doing
Mm-hmm.
that perfectly
Yeah, I see what you're
with
saying.
old school
Sure.
stuff. So, um, but
One thing
yeah,
I think they did really well, and I know we're just kind of touching on Afterlife because we're getting ready for Frozen Empire, but two, it was great to see what they did with Harold Ramis, obviously after he passed away.
yes,
Totally
super
made
cool.
him a huge part of the movie, which is awesome, you know, and the whole legacy part of it and everything. But obviously, like I said, when I talk about Frozen Empire, I want it to be good so much because of what it would mean to the first two, and it took so long to get a third one made, and now here we are, we're getting a fourth one. Like,
A fourth one with the old characters,
yes,
actors
that's why
playing
it's
their.
like I want it to be so good because I don't want a shit sequel to tarnish a legacy that
Yeah, yeah.
people, you know, that is so good, right? And
How
that's
some people see the Indiana Jones movie, right? Like,
yeah, totally. A lot of people didn't like it because they think it tarnished Indiana's legacy. Maybe it did. I don't know. I liked it. You liked it. We reviewed
yeah,
it. It was good.
yeah.
Overall, original Ghostbusters. Listen, it's a 9. The original's a 9. It's a fantastic movie. It's an all timer. Ghostbusters 2 is an 8. Like it's still a great movie. Like it's not as good as the original, but I still have it way up there. I still love it. I still rewatch it.
I'm gonna give original Ghostbusters a 9.5,
Mm-hmm.
9.5. I don't. I. It's not like the Ninja Turtles to me, but it's still great fucking movie that
Yep.
it lives in a in a in its own bubble for the rest of time. So 9.5, and then for the second one, I would say an 8 is probably right. Maybe 7.5. Let me give it an 8. Let me give it an 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're fun movies. I think
Yeah.
Ghostbusters is like every year, every other year kind of movie.
For
Like,
sure. Yeah.
it's a good Halloween season movie. Music is always great from that, but
Well, the second one
yeah,
is a New Year's movie. I mean, you can always watch it at New Year's.
I don't think anybody watches Ghostbusters 2 as their New Year's movie. However, that's not really a holiday that I think people were like, all right, let's put on our New Year's movie.
We watched Statue of Liberty smashes the roof at the stroke of midnight. It's great.
I think people are still watching A Christmas Story by that point. So
it might still be on.
It's always on. It is always on. It's on right now.
It's not on right now. You're full of it. Anyway, that's our review for Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2. Both highly recommended. And if you haven't seen them, shame on you. Shame on you. But that takes us into... Oh, what do you got?
I can't even picture that there's a person out there who hasn't seen the original Ghostbusters.
That's a very good point. I mean, like, if there are people out there that haven't seen it, you're dead to me.
Shocking. Shame.
Yeah. Shame. All right, that takes us into my favorite segment. There can be only 5.
Only 5.
So for this week, funny, you suggested 2, and the one that I was going to pick, you was one of the 2. And I was like, well, that's easy because I already have my list. So we're good to go. Because I was going to suggest it, and I had just forgot to send it to you. So if you're okay, I'll start with that list, which is the top 5 Bill Murray performances.
This was hard.
It was hard, and I think we're going to have very different lists.
Very different.
We'll see. Sometimes we surprise each other, so
I'm going to get... This is one of those, as I was writing this list down, this was the one that I'm like, all right, the 5 people that watch this pod that text me throughout the episode as they're watching they're going to roast me for this one, but I'm okay with it. I live my truth. So
I do have to throw that in there to the 5 people that listen to this pod. I am listening to the Dune audiobook, and I am learning all the proper pronunciations.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe in a future episode after I'm done listening to it and Dune Messiah, we can do a words from Dune and correct pronunciation segment. I might do that just for fun.
Oh my God.
All right, top 5 Bill Murray performances. I have one honorable mention, which is, so obviously later in his career, Bill Murray really started doing a lot of Wes Anderson movies. And this is not Wes Anderson's best movie, but he'd already done a few for him. And then this was the first one where he got to do the lead. So my honorable mention is The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, which Bill Murray's awesome in the movie. The movie's great. I like Wes Anderson movies. They're quirky. They're not like super rewatchable, but I think they're fun. Anyway, Wes Anderson, not Wes Craven. Kyle.
I was going to say, that was one of the things I got roasted for by some of my friends. But I had texted you this after the episode came out. I'm like, I'm an idiot. I know Wes Anderson movies.
You're an idiot.
Yeah, I'm an idiot. You're an idiot. I know they're the quirky ones that people make. Like, what if this movie was in a Wes Anderson version of it?
All the AI Wes Anderson versions of exactly. But anyway, I like Life Aquatic, so it's my honorable mention. And number 5 for Bill Murray performances, I had Stripes at number 5. Stripes is an all-time 80s comedy classic. I rewatched this movie 100 times. Like, it's him, it's Harold Ramis. Like, there's a ton of lines in this movie that I can quote. I mean, it's hilarious. John Candy's in it. It's basically like these guys go to boot camp in the Army, then they get deployed, then they're stationed, and they're just degenerates, basically. And it's hilarious. Anyway, if you've never seen Stripes, you definitely need to watch it. Fools. At number 4, I had Rushmore, which was another quirky Wes Anderson movie. And it's actually probably my favorite Wes Anderson movie. It's got some hilarious lines in it too that are super dry and witty, but basically Bill Murray like befriends Jason Schwartzman's character, who's like this high school student's in love with his teacher, and then there's this conflict that Bill Murray develops with him because they like the same person. And anyway, it's pretty entertaining. I really enjoy it, but I thought Bill Murray was great in that. So now we're going to get some all-time classics. At number 3, I had Groundhog Day. I love the movie. I think it's such a goofy concept, but it was so original. And anything that came afterwards that had to do with time loops or something, it was like, oh, it's Groundhog Day in space, or it's
Yes.
Groundhog Day there, because it's such a and it's a Harold Ramis movie, and he's in it. He plays the doctor in the movie. But Bill
Fuck, I
Murray's
forgot about
like,
that.
he's like this cynical asshole weatherman that, you know, works in Pennsylvania. He's got to go cover the groundhog, and he's stuck in this time loop. And it's basically like, you're a piece of crap. You have to have the perfect like day, and all the relationships he builds with all these people in this town, all the different things he does. It's awesome. I love Bill Murray in that, and I love Groundhog Day. It's a great movie, and you should watch it every February 2nd. At number 2, I had the original Ghostbusters. At number 2, I think Bill Murray as the lead in this movie. I'm not saying he carries it, but I think he's awesome in it as Peter Venkman. I love Ghostbusters. I love his character. You could tell like all the ad-lib lines, some of just the insults he's slinging. And it's funny because I watched it on Hulu, because it was on Hulu this week instead of just popping in the Blu-ray. But my wife always watches shit with subtitles on because she can't hear very well. And so the subtitles were on, and some of the things that I didn't realize he's saying, and like heavy action scenes and stuff that come across the subtitles, like I picked up like, that's hilarious, and I didn't realize that's exactly what he was saying the first time I heard this. So interesting. Sometimes watching subtitles on a movie is kind of funny. So I had that at number 2. And then my number 1, and not his best movie, but his best performance by far, to me, is What About Bob. I love What About Bob. I think he's amazing in this. He like basically goes to see Richard Dreyfuss, who's a psychiatrist, and he like feels like he's the greatest psychiatrist ever. And he's this, I don't want to say he's neurotic, but he's got all these mental issues.
Super weird.
And he basically follows him on his vacation with his family. And like, of course the family likes him because he's this lovable, like psychotic, but there's all these crazy things that happen. And Richard Dreyfuss is like basically trying to kill him the whole movie. And
like leave me alone.
He's like the most annoying, lovable, crazy person in a movie ever. Anyway, my favorite Bill Murray performance has got to be What About Bob?
Fascinating. What a list. I like your list.
Thank you.
You did not. It was not what I thought it was going to be. There was a movie or two on there, but I really thought there was going to be some other movies there. Like at one point, as I was doing mine, I'm like, I bet I could guess Howie's right now and be right. I was not right. So
did you think I was going to have a bunch of his like later career dramatic roles on there?
No. Okay. I did have a feeling that Life Aquatic would make some, whether it was a list or honorable mention. I thought there would be like Caddyshack and stuff like that on there. So
Caddyshack was almost on there, but he's like kind of a supporting role, and I do think he's hilarious. But like, I think Chevy Chase is the funniest thing about Caddyshack. Yes. In my opinion, Chevy Chase's character is the funniest thing. So that's the only reason I didn't have it on there.
Our lists are vastly different. And I'm glad for that, because that means we get to talk about some of the movies that you didn't mention. And Wonderful. He's got a lot of movies. He has tons
of movies.
And so I don't know if you picked up on this, but when I had sent over like top 5 Bill Murray performances, I didn't say top 5 Bill Murray movies.
Right.
I said performances, particularly because he does a ton of like side character, not very much in the movie, but very memorable roles. And speaking of which, I have 2 honorable mentions. And one of them is just like what I just explained. He's not in this movie really at all, other than one scene.
I think I know what it is.
And his house is the location.
Yep, that's exactly what I thought you were talking about. Yep.
Zombieland. Yeah. If you've ever seen Zombieland, the moment that he shows up, he's playing himself, Bill Murray, and like everyone, I can't remember, like in the movie theater, everyone was like, "Holy shit, that's Bill Murray!"
Yeah.
Like, let's go! Like that was just fucking. He's so funny as a zombie at the end of the world. And then two, my other honorable mention. Very hard to not have this on my list. It was painful not to have this on my list. Osmosis Jones. Osmosis Jones
I've never seen it.
is oh dude, it's
Never
so
seen it.
funny. Oh, it's like a live action movie.
Right.
It's half live action, half cartoon. Chris Rock plays like he's like a cop, but he's inside the body. He's like a DNA or amoeba or something. Someone's gonna roast me for it. I can't remember, but like the cartoon world in the movie is inside his body, and he is like a total slob who doesn't take care of his body, doesn't eat right, and he catches a virus, and that virus is like the bad guy in the cartoon,
Right.
and it's a buddy cop movie where I don't know why I can't think of the name of the buddy who's buddies up and teams up with Chris Rock, but Bill Murray takes like an 8-hour like cold medicine pill to try to fight this virus that ends up him not knowing, but it's like one of the most rare like deadly diseases or viruses in the whole world. And Chris Rock teams up with this like 8-hour like medicine pill that's supposed to only be there to help take care of minor symptoms. And Chris Rock's cop character is like a joke of a police officer. And so they team up to take down this like massively huge supervillain that they both have no business doing. It's fucking hilarious. Who plays I know you just looked it up. Who's the buddy?
So Chris Rock is a white blood cell. And David Hyde Pierce is special agent Drixenol.
Yeah, Drixenol. Dude, it is a really funny movie that I don't think a lot of people have seen. And for whatever reason, it was like a VHS that we had, so we watched it a lot. But
Right.
Bill Murray in the movie is the world's greatest slob. Like, he doesn't wash his hands. He eats food like straight from the floor. And the movie is about like, this is what happens inside your body when you do things like not washing your hands and eating like a fried chicken that's fallen on the ground and rolled around.
Gross.
Like he's so good at being horrible and nasty. Anyways, I just talked a ton about my honorable mention per usual. But Osmosis Jones, you have to fucking watch that at some point. I'm telling you, your kids will love it. My kids love it too. Actually, I've watched it with them. Okay, my list number 5. No one really thinks of this movie when they think of Bill Murray, but I do because he's playing himself, and real life Bill Murray is fucking awesome. Little did we know that Bill Murray could be the starting shooting guard for any NBA team. Space Jam. Obviously, the movie's great, but his character is so underrated and hilarious in that movie. He has like this cool old guy uncle at the barbecue who is good at every sport, but he looks like he's never worked out in his life.
Right.
And his friendship with Michael Jordan is just he's great. It's a great performance from him. My number 4, I've got Scrooged.
Nice.
Scrooged is a Christmas movie. It's like obviously one of the greatest versions of A Christmas Carol, which we've talked about a ton on this show.
Yep.
But Scrooged is iconic. It's classic. He's hilarious. People use the Frozen gif of him all the time from that movie. Scrooge, he plays a great Scrooge. And then I relisted my list, so I'm trying to make sure I'm keeping them all in the right order. So that was I just did number 4, right?
Yep.
And then my number 3, I have Groundhog Day. For all of the reasons that you said, it is the quintessential time loop movie. Very original. He does a great job in that. He's funny, but also like has great serious moments and makes you really like. He's lovable in it. Hilarious moments just watching him step in a giant puddle or drive a freaking groundhog in a truck off of a cliff at a construction site. Like everything he did in that movie was freaking perfect and hilarious. My number 2 movie. What About Bob?
Yes.
Man, what a freaking hilarious movie. And that was the one that I was like, oh, Howie won't even know this movie, or he won't mention it. He won't know that I know this movie. What About Bob is such a freaking classic. He
awesome.
plays the best annoying psych patient like ever. And like you said, Richard Dreyfuss he's so annoyed that Bill Murray is fucking up his vacation and that his family loves him for it and wants him to be a part of the group. It's just Bill Murray he's at peak there.
The part where he like ties him to the mast of the boat when they're like sailing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I haven't seen that in years. But
it's so good though.
It's so good. And then number 1, I've got Ghostbusters.
Nice.
And that's the movie when I think of Bill Murray. That is the first movie that I think of. That is like he could play Venkman. He could have played that and only that for the rest of his life in 100 movies, and I would have watched every one of them because he's fucking so good in it. So, Peter Venkman is him, and he is Peter Venkman. So we need him in. What were you going to say?
We surprised ourselves. We had the same top 3, just in a different order. Crazy. I didn't think that would have happened.
You didn't think What About Bob was going to make my list?
No, and you didn't think it would make mine. So
that is true. None of us had Caddyshack, so all of Bill Murray casuals are going to make fun of us. But Life Aquatic, it's kind of like, I wouldn't put it in the Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind in that it's like totally an annoying movie, but it's up there with like a movie that people think is this just like amazing thing that I just don't get.
That's fair. I get it. Wes Anderson's movies are, some of them just they have a weird taste.
Also, I think my Ninja Turtle the lights are dying because it slowly went from white to red over. Yeah, it slowly died over the whole episode. Fading. And it did that last episode, so I got to get a new one there.
Yeah. Oh, it's good. That's a good list. That was, it's totally different. I almost had Meatballs on my list too, but
I did see that on like towards the higher end of the rankings for a lot.
That was one of the we had the VHS tape when I was a kid, and I was like, my dad had Meatballs, so then I watched Meatballs all the time.
Nice.
So yeah,
that's great.
All right, what do you got? What's your list? What are we doing?
Oh shoot! As you say that, I'm like in my head. I thought we were done. I forgot we got one more. All right. So this next list, I was trying to like obviously stay on brand with the things that keep it on with the movie. And so my thought was top 5 nerd movie franchises that started in the 80s. So kind of a mouthful. But my thought was like, all right, what, like Ghostbusters is a franchise that came out of the 80s that it's beloved. Everybody loves it. What other franchises came out during that time that we love now? And I thought there were some different franchises in this time period that I was wrong about. And then there were franchises in this time period that I didn't know started. So it was like, oh, okay, well, this was fun to put together. It was kind of difficult. But I'm going to stick with my 5 no honorable mentions. And there might be a couple of horror franchises that were not in my list that you could pick one of 5 or all 5 could have been in this. But My number 5 franchise that started in the 80s, Beetlejuice.
Oh, I suppose.
It's a franchise
It is now.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, we haven't got a second movie yet,
Right.
so it might be a little bit of a loophole, but it is a beloved franchise that has
Fair.
lived on in infamy through Universal Studios and the Beetlejuice character.
There's
And
a
now we're
Broadway
going to get
show, and
it kicked off something that has lasted a lifetime since. Well, I guess it's only been 30, 40 years, but you know what I mean. Okay, Beetlejuice, number 4, which originally I had this higher, but I bumped it back because just like I really went with like my list, right? So like the things that I am interested in. So it
yes.
fell further down than what I think the casual would make on their list of this. I had number 4, Back to the Future. 3 amazing movies. Like you said, most people like the first one is the most beloved. I think for me, I enjoy watching the second one. Not, I don't know. And the one that I don't think gets a lot of love, the cowboy one, is not like fully loved, but that I think is the one I've seen more than any of the other ones, if that makes sense. So
yeah, I get what you're saying.
Back to the Future, they should bring that back in some way. I know it's a little bit difficult with Michael J. Fox and what's going on with him.
Yeah.
But that franchise is fucking amazing and everybody loves Back to the Future. I don't know anybody that doesn't like Back to the Future. So
right.
And then my number 3, one of my favorite nerd franchises ever. There's been a couple great movies. There's been a couple shitty ass movies, but no matter what, I am front and center because I'm here for it. Terminator. Arnold kicked this off in the 80s where he's the bad guy Terminator. Then we got T2 later on that changed the game. Just the overall Skynet, John Connor, Terminator, T-800, T-1000. These are all classic things that if you're a nerd, you know everything that I'm talking about, specifically because of these franchises. So I actually even loved the Christian Bale, John Connor movie that didn't get a lot of praise.
We talked about that. I did too, yeah.
A fucking badass. Christian Bale is going to play future John Connor in the war side? Yes. I think they just missed on the timing of when we followed him in the future. I wanted to see him as like badass war general, and he wasn't quite there yet. So,
right.
Anyways, number 2. Gosh, do I want to flip these two?
I bet it's the same ones I had at 1 and 2. Because I've flipped them at least 3 times.
I could flip. You know what? Yeah, I'm gonna do a 1A and a 1B.
Yeah,
because it really just depends on the day, the time, the way the wind's blowing, what I've watched recently. So I'm gonna go with 1B, Indiana Jones, one of the greatest movie. I'm taking it back. That's my 1A. That's my number 1. Indiana Jones is my number 1 franchise from the 80s. That's 1A. And then my 1B, we've been talking about it today, Ghostbusters. Between Ghostbusters, what am I missing? Is there a franchise I'm missing that I'm... Oh, God. I'm missing a franchise. Oh, my God. I'm so nervous to find out what it is. I'm about to have a Rudy moment again.
There's no way. There's no way you forgot it.
What? Oh, if you're referring to Batman as the franchise, okay, so for those that are listening, on most everybody's list of franchises that kicked off from the 80s, Batman is listed. I did not choose to put it on my list because I was going for, in my head, I was thinking like franchises that started in the 80s. And though, yes, the 1989 Batman kicked off like a movie, like a trilogy or quadruple or whatever the hell I don't know what the word is that you would say for the movies that came out for it. Quadrilogy. I like there had already been Batman movies before. I was thinking like franchises that started in the 80s. And though, yes, the Batman franchise movie series started then, like in my head, I was like, there's already been a Adam West movie.
All right.
If I was including it, it would be number one. It's the greatest fucking movie franchise ever. Like, come on. It's Batman and Batman Returns. If I could go back to our episodes, I'd give them both Golden 11. So, but I didn't. I was thinking franchises that started in the 80s. And I had 1A and 1B, or 1 and 2-1, Indiana Jones and Ghostbusters. That's it. Those are my franchises.
Great. I love it. I love your list.
Give me your list, because I feel like they're going to be vastly different.
They're not. Honorable mentions. I had 3 horror franchises. I just wanted to say, like, I thought I didn't include them, but I have to mention.
Did I not kind of hit that? I have to mention
Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Evil Dead. I had to mention them. You know where I stand on those 3 franchises. I had to mention them as honorable mentions.
Yep.
And number 5, maybe not the nerdiest of franchises, but I have to include it because it's Die Hard. I had to include Die Hard on my list.
I knew it. Yep.
At number 5, because it started in the 80s. I had to include Die Hard.
And you are the biggest Die Hard fan I've ever met. And I know there's more of you out there, but you love fucking Die Hard.
Yeah. I still think the first one's the greatest action movie ever made. So
I need to go back and watch them now that I have officially watched Pulp Fiction from start to finish. I know, text me and roast me.
Crazy.
I had never watched Pulp Fiction from start to finish. I've only watched the first half of the movie a bunch of times growing up, and I didn't get it. So I finally did, and now I didn't realize Bruce Willis was in it. He was amazing. I want to go back and watch all the Die Hards after watching him in Pulp Fiction. Anyways, continue. Tell me your list. What's number 4?
So at number 4, I had Terminator as a franchise. And the reason I had it at number 4, listen, 1 and 2 are both masterpieces. Like, the first 2 movies in the franchise are so good. And then it just goes, like, sinks like a rock. As much as I like Salvation, just like you said, like, I liked Salvation. I thought it was way better than everybody else thought it would. It's the 3rd best movie in the franchise, but I didn't like 3 at all. And I didn't like any of the other sequels. I thought they were all terrible. Genesis, Dark Fate, whatever.
They were not good.
They were not good. None of them were good. They kept trying too hard or something.
Dude,
didn't care for it. I didn't like them.
Just stick with the original concept and just do that again.
Well, they kind of tried to with Dark Fate, but then they made like the humans hybrid, and then he was kind of like the T-1000, but wasn't.
They tried. They feel like every movie has to have, like, the bad guy villain has to be an even.
Yeah.
But
they ruined that in 3, though. That's when they made it worse, was because she was dumb.
Yeah, she was weird.
Yeah,
she was like a T-1000, like, on steroids.
Yeah, I didn't.
I agree.
And her casting was terrible too. She was Blood Rain, and that was like it ever again.
Yeah, it felt like it was like Office Karen, Office Karen as the bad guy.
If Terminator would have even had one more sequel that was worth a darn, if like Dark Fate would have been the movie we wanted it to be when they were bringing Linda Hamilton back and everything, like, it wasn't. Like, it was still bad. Whatever. Yep. Anyway, Terminator, number 4.
Love it.
Number 3, I had Ghostbusters. And number 3. Because I think those first 2 are iconic. I think Afterlife was a worthy successor, and I'm excited for Frozen Empire. So Ghostbusters. I don't need to go into too much detail. Then number 2, I had Indiana Jones. I think Indiana Jones is one of the greatest. It's probably the greatest action adventure film franchise. Probably adventure film. Like, Harrison Ford is great. Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of the greatest movies ever made. Probably. It's an all-timer. And I think Temple of Doom is good. And Last Crusade, which was in 1989, was just almost as good as the original. Love that movie so much.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I didn't like Crystal Skull as much, but I liked Dial of Destiny. So I think as a franchise, it did pretty well as a whole for being what it is. And then number one, I had Batman. Like I consider, and this is why I had Batman at number one, and this is why I think it needs to be on this list. Like Adam West's Batman was its own thing, right? Like I mean, it was nothing like the comics. Like it was campy, it was goofy, it was made for the times. It was a TV show that they made into a movie at the end of the TV show. That's all it was. Like you don't count it, but I know it is what it is. So I understand what you're saying. But as a franchise, and I'm not just talking about like the first four movies, I'm talking about Batman as a whole. Like that movie is so important in the history of movies. Like we wouldn't have a lot of what we have now if it wasn't for Tim Burton's Batman. And I think everybody knows that. Like that movie was so important to like what Marvel has now, and how the fact that we keep getting Batman movies because it is the greatest superhero movie franchise. He is the greatest superhero, like all those things. That's why that movie is so important. And it's the first two movies, like you said, you'd give them both golden 11s. They're both great masterpiece movies. I didn't mind Batman Forever. It was okay. Batman and Robin sucks. And then, but we don't get Nolan's movies if these aren't successful. We don't get that if this isn't what it is. And so that's like Batman. I thought Batman's number one.
Like you're right, for the importance to like superhero movies overall, we wouldn't have it without that. And also correct in the just Batman himself and like the character itself. Like that movie made it cool for him to be like dark and brooding and badass.
Yes. Yeah.
And that kicked off Batman animated series and all the other things of like Batman as a serious character. Like he's not doing the bat dance and using shark repellent. Like he's a fucking badass. So I agree. I like your list. I obviously, as a Batman nerd, I'm sitting here holding a new Batman figure as we're talking here.
Yeah.
I regret not having him on my list, but the reason I think behind mine was valid, but also
I agree.
I
understood your reasoning when you said it. I just felt like
you were like, wow, the Batman guy doesn't have Batman on.
And then I was like waiting. I'm like, he didn't just forget it. Like there's got to be a legitimate reason. Like you can't forget a movie franchise that you've got like 30 figures in front of you while you're recording this. Like there's no way you forget it. Or they're behind you. I'm like looking behind you and seeing Jack's portrait, and it's like he's not forgetting Batman.
I have all of the Batman figures next week.
Right.
Oh, also, by the way, I just got my shelf to put up 89 Batman on the wall. So the nerd layer is growing. Anyways, I like your list. Anything that has Batman number one, I'm here for it. So
I didn't have Back to the Future on my list.
That is surprising.
And
I also am shocked on a specific franchise that you didn't have on your list in any way, shape, or form.
Which one?
Didn't Evil Dead? Wasn't that in the 80s?
No, I mentioned it in my honorable mentions. I did say it.
Oh, shoot. Okay, I missed that. Damn it.
No, I said Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Evil Dead.
I didn't hear the third one. I truly thought you were going to have that as one or two. I really did.
No.
So
no. Horror franchises, one thing, but these others are a little different. So it's I was thinking about it too, because I was like, I couldn't remember when the first Alien came out. I was like, ooh, was that 79 or was that 80? And then because that Aliens would have made the list somewhere.
What's that set? Was that 79?
Yeah, I think it was, because the sequel
70s.
was
Aliens.
The sequel was 86. I think Aliens was 86 or 87. 79. Yeah, it was 79. So it wasn't quite the 80s.
Man. Fascinating. There was so many other franchises that I was like, oh, I thought that was I didn't realize that wasn't in the 80s. I say that and now I can't think of ones off the top of my head.
No,
but
I'm with you. But yeah, the only reason I didn't have Back to the Future on there is like I'll watch Batman, or I'll watch Indiana Jones, or I'll watch Ghostbusters, or I'll watch Terminator. Like I probably once a year, or once every other year, right? Like Die Hard, I watch every Christmas. Like that's a done deal. But all those I usually watch at least once a year. Like Back to the Future, I watched the first one with Reagan this year, but like I hadn't seen it in probably 7 or 8 years. Like I don't go out of my way to watch it.
I think now that
It's
cable
not
is
that it's
not a
bad.
normal thing,
Yeah.
we watched it a lot more, like, because there would always be on TV. Like
Yes,
growing
I agree.
up, and I don't watch just cable these days, so I'm not like,
Do
oh
people
shit,
do that? I don't think people do that anymore.
I don't know.
I wouldn't even know. I don't know those people.
Yeah, these peasants.
Anyway, that brings us to the end of the episode. If you're watching us on YouTube, click that like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. If you're not watching us on YouTube, hopefully you're listening to us on one of many podcast networks that we're featured on, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Podcast Index. You can also check out some of our short clips and videos on social media at Movie Dads Pod, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We're back next week, episode 42, big premiere movie of the week, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Looking forward to that one. High hopes. Here we go. And then hopefully by the time we record, I will have seen Late Night with the Devil, and I can share my thoughts on that one. So that's it. That's the end of the episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate it. See you next time.
Bye.